All right. um. All right. So the aspects, I'll just really basically lightly touch on some concepts and some topics that maybe you can just are food for thought and everything, and um, give some musical examples of tradition and like background and roots that in the aspect of what some folks are calling like colonized folk music or more colonized banjo playing, these elements aren't present because they're not being culturally held because the cultures aren't really being represented within certain circles that are holding all these folk traditions together. uh, so is everyone with me so far on that? Because I'm open for questions at any time if you have them. But if you have like some long questions or a lot, I will ask you to kind of hold them until the end and just like jot down notes and things. Um, as far as dates and times and songs of old folk musicians and the whole aspect of tradition, some of that silences the voices of black folk in folk music, even in the even within black folks also representing themselves or trying to do the work to represent themselves in a way. And I'll say that it is limiting in the fact of it is not it's hard to see where life is being breathed into the newness of folk music when it comes to black culture, when the narrative is not being held by the people, the people that the banjo comes from, and that inspired kind of the movement of what we thought was folk music, or what we may be thinking folk music is or could be. And so I will give you some examples. uh, Amazing Grace isn't really a folk tune, but within an aspect of tradition of folk people getting together and playing. And from my own tradition, and speaking from my own tradition, I grew up in southern Oklahoma, and most of my musical tradition was oral or passed down by ear. And I grew up with a lot of old school blues players, gospel players, sharecroppers, old sharecroppers, and learning the songs and calls and some of the stories, and being able to be very close to the story and the history of folk singing. And no famous, not too many famous people or big names, just people living life and sharing their experiences through music, through sound, through song, through food, through their expression of life. And so, for instance, we would hear Amazing Grace, and depending on the mood or what was desired, it kind of depends on how you would hear Amazing Grace. It wasn't very verbatim as far as what was demanded of the song. One of the only things that was expected is that it would be spirit filled and kind of soulfully led to a large degree. And some might call it jazz or blues or a various amount of other things because it doesn't fit into what we may be accustomed to hearing in folk music. Mind you, the banjo music originally is from Africa. It's African music, at its core. The dances, kind of even some of the turn of phrases, the name banjo are all identifiers of Africa, as well as some of the subtle nuances within the musical culture of improvisation or call and response, or the communication of the newness of trying something within a familiar container, which may be a song that is agreed upon, and that's the safe container to express more. So, like, we would hear Amazing Grace. I mean, which is cool. You get the gist of Amazing Grace, and it's a nice song, and we can go through it and kick it up a notch and strip it down or whatever you want to do with it. But what I feel is like the aspect of like spirit and soul, like the sultry nuances of the African spirit that's within music and will always continue to be there. You can listen to it now or old. It's something that is fresh and brand new continuously throughout the ages. And so to me, I grew up hearing Amazing Grace like this. Something like that. But that would be a basic foundation. And the aspect of it's a concept. It's the concept of a song or the idea of expression that allows space for people to put their experiences and input what you will. So everyone can be involved in it. And folk music is beautiful because I like that aspect. What I'm finding is in a lot of circles that tradition, or what we are calling tradition in folk music, is so rigid that there's no space for the cultural aspects of tradition to live and thrive within. And I'm just going to be blunt and straightforward with you. And it's largely within white spaces when we're talking about folk music. And this is something that's very good to note because it's something that we can talk about and actually, work towards changing and being more open and going, all right on. There is something that we can do to grow together and build more solidarity. So, has anybody got any questions so far? If you do, raise your hand or like star, circle, thumbs up or something. At any time. So on the banjo, I'll give an example of the banjo. The fiddle has roots in Africa too. Some old string bowed instruments called the riti from West Africa. The diddy was also an instrument that actually came to America. But the banjo here. I'll start with the slightly more colonized version here with frets on it. So we got this idea of like claw hammer, which is not, I don't really prefer the name so much because it's not really what I'm doing when I play. And I feel like the idea of that claw and a hammer is kind of limiting to how we can express if we're not thinking of strokes or shuffles or dancing across the strings or another kind of life outside of two inanimate objects, a claw and a hammer. But I'm going to keep it very simple, and this is really more of a rhythmic thing because banjo is a rhythmic instrument. So I'll say it like this: Western music is more melodically driven, and then perhaps there's rhythmic emphasis, and in African music, melody is very important. Although it starts with the rhythm, and the rhythm is what sets the groove. The groove, that space where things fit. So that's the vibe. That's the ambiance, or the presence of kind of a spirit, or how set the tone or the space. And then the melody is kind of a thing that can outline that and accentuate certain parts. Um, and you'll find this in the old Ngufu music, blues, which is what blues is called in Africa, or any others. And actually, outside of Africa, there is a very thriving and alive culture of music and folk music, all styles of music that's right here and accessible to us at our fingertips. Um, that's actually, if anything, that would be my main thing. I hope anyone takes out of this, outside of whatever small rants I get into, is that there is a life and a culture here on this land that's not dead. It's not a tradition that is rooted or should be strong held in the identities, songs, behaviors, and nuances of black folks who had to express themselves in a certain way because of the times that they lived in. And whereas some of those songs are great and good to sing, a lot of them are oppressive and damaging to black communities, or people of color. And so that's something to keep in mind when we express and share um, these beautiful songs and cool little tunes and stuff. Kind of where that is. I guess this isn't necessarily the Zoom for that, but I had an experience where I went to a space and I didn't feel very welcome in it, because of the songs and how the songs were, not being honored, how the people who wrote the songs were not being honored or seen, and how me, as being someone who resembled these folks, um, was not being honored or seen, or respected. And I'll just kind of leave that at that. We can follow up. There'll be another Zoom meeting on all of that good stuff, but I'm not alone. I say that to say that I'm not alone in my experience or my feelings. And we have groups of folk around the world, around even around the Bay, around this area, doing really good work to bring about a change. Um, and it's not a drastic change or anything. I don't even think of it as a change. Maybe an opening, a heart opening prompt, you know, a deeply needed request for more love and solidarity of people in honoring each other in what it is that we do in our actions, our behaviors, the songs we sing. And some of these would be honoring the beauty of the idea of conceptualized music and not having to have songs sound exactly like they sounded 1,000 or 100 years ago or something. There is some beauty to that. There is some beauty to that, but also it can be damaging, especially in this country, when the elements or the foundations of those stories have not been spoken on or talked about and discussed in an open dialogue. So again, if anyone has any questions so far, I would greatly welcome them. If not, yeah.
It's very
It's
loud.
very loud.
It is.
Sorry.
Well,
I just
I
like
like what that last point you just made about kind of
trying to be.
I guess it reminds me um, arguments around being faithful to a tradition that sound. Can you hear me?
Uh-huh.
So faithfulness to the sound of
Excuse me just a second. There's a lot of echo. If you are not Seemore or the person talking, please mute yourself. Please continue with your question.
is it?
Go for it. I want to hear what you got to say.
Yeah. So I think you were just talking about kind of the issue of being faithful to a sound, faithful to a story
that music carries, and
also
trying to express yourself within that. And how do you? I don't know.
I guess
that's a
that's a
problem
problem
all the
all the
time.
time.
I want
I want
to
to respect the tradition and
the
the
sound
sound that
creates it, and I want
to
respect
respect
myself
myself and
and
my
my identity
community
and
and
where.
where we are.
So
I wonder
what you
what you think about that.
Well, I think we're all trying to navigate that space and understanding just how we do it. I wish I had an ABC, laid out plan on this is how you do it. But honestly, I don't. I do know that this is the way that we come about, finding how we do that is having, these discussions because, white folks in America have been playing the banjo for a long time. And, it's touched a lot of people's hearts all ago. This was before the pandemic, and I walked into a music shop in Chinatown. It was really cool. They had this beautiful banjo with this alligator skin on it, with all this awesome pearl inlays, gold. It was like the cat's meow. It was super cool. And I saw these, two Chinese brothers sitting down, and they were trading songs from their tradition, from their culture, from their tradition on the banjo. And that's how they learned it. I full of tunes, play them today though. I got them recorded somewhere, but I thought that was beautiful. It just showed me it's like the banjo's gone everywhere. It touches. It's a beautiful instrument. It touches everyone's hearts. It's a part of all of our culture. Absolutely. Also, in understanding how much it touches us and it holds our hearts, it's important to make sure that, hey, if we know this, we know that it also has an opportunity to, touch someone else's heart, and other cultures and communities. And so, for me, being a member of the Black Banjo Reclamation Project, I know that's a big thing, is getting this sound and this instrument to communities that in the past have had little or no access to it, um, because of historical circumstance. And that historical circumstance is not completely eradicated today. And so, continuing the maintenance of, all right, what is it that we can do to continue to, have this clearing of the heart and the space, so that, there is real solidarity. We can play our hearts out on the banjo and feel, held by all, universal spirit, and, friends, family, loved ones, all of that. So, this is how we do it. It's in the dialogue and the discussion, because the banjo has touched lives all over the world, no doubt at all, and it will continue. That's my tried and true belief, because it's a powerful instrument, and it was designed for people who were led by a spirit greater than them. So I'm very grateful for the instrument itself, because in me playing it, it's opened my heart up in my experiences and my sense of identity and culture and foundation and comfort, even in this space of being able to go, oh, okay, the banjo, I you know what, I felt more African and more American at the same time when I started playing the banjo than any other instrument. I play every instrument, horns, brass, strings, woodwind, you name it. But it wasn't until I picked up the banjo and I heard the sounds and I really recognized that, oh, there's more to it than, just learning a tune. I don't know a whole lot of old time tunes on the banjo, as far as, Jimmy Crack Corn, or whatever the Sweeney tunes are that's, popular these days. I choose not to mess with it a whole lot. It's like I got a spirit and a voice inside of me that I'm working on getting out and continuing to cultivate. And I have great enough ears where I can sit down and learn a tune pretty quick, so I'm not tripping on that. It's about, for me, it's about getting together and jamming with folks, whoever they are, wherever they are. I just want to be a part of the jam and share that joy and that spirit and that music. And so I've cultivated my concept of music and my skills in relation to how I grew up in my culture, because wherever we went, everybody was ready to go. We were ready to play. No matter, from one church to another, from one group to the next, from playing, a sanctus in a Catholic mass, to playing klezmer music at a synagogue, to going and playing, old school mariachi music, from the 17th century. I enjoyed it. I did not claim any of those to be my own. I was blessed to be accepted by a culture and a group of people that wanted to share their expression through music and song. And I sat down with my fellow brothers and sisters and I played music. And I fed my soul, and we fed each other's soul, and we feasted together. And we do that with the banjo, sitting down and, jamming our fiddle tunes and stuff like that. And so I'm not here to tell anybody to stop playing the banjo by any means. I would actually encourage you to help other people learn the banjo. Help some black folks learn the banjo. Share the story that is not just, share a story about moving out of the way and allowing others to narrate their own story. How about that? That is how I'll say that. And in doing that, we are showing support. We are really showing support. Anybody else?
Yeah.
Can I ask?
Yes.
Before I start, echo.
Deco, I have a suggestion.
Okay.
Seemore,
Yeah.
when you're listening, you should, yes, that's it. You got it.
Okay.
Oh, beautiful.
All right. Hey, all right. Thank you. I'm Dennis. I'm a person of color. And there was one comment in the chat about the person who wrote the lyrics to Amazing Grace was a slave ship owner, or he was captain of a slave ship. And at first I felt a little bit put off by that comment because it said, how do you feel about that? And I want to answer it in a good way based on what you just said. He may have been the captain of a slave ship. However, he became an abolitionist. And we're sharing a hymn that is about forgiveness and redemption. And so I want to do a shout out on that at first I took offense, a little bit of an offense, like I thought Amazing Grace was owned by Black people in a way, but no. But that's what makes it so beautiful. You just said about teaching other people the banjo and not telling anybody to stop playing banjo. So that's my comment. And if you have something else to say about it, that'd be great. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you, Dennis. That was wonderful. I appreciate that. Yes. Amazing Grace. Absolutely. And I definitely use that example. I personally don't care for Amazing Grace myself. In lieu of the history of it, I do know it was an abolitionist that had changed their lives, and they did some great work in maintaining the slave system before that, for sure. And it is triggering to different folks in the black and people of color, and in general, it's triggering to some people. So at the same time, it has been a song that has melted hard hearts as well. And so I will say that that song came from a person who changed their life and wrote a song to express that. For me, I'm like, respect. He didn't write a song that said, jump Jim Crow, or, run N-word run. I will say that he made a choice in his intentions to arrange, that song for his experiences. And I feel like with more mindfulness, it doesn't erase anything that he did, but it was, to me, a staple of where he decided to go with his life and in his life. And so, I get all the respect for me in the world for that, because everyone has the ability to change, but not the courage to. I mean, we all have the capacity to it, but, we got to take the steps and do the work to it and, admit to ourselves. And so if, that's the song for him to come to himself and admit to himself, hey, I've done some wrong. I need to move forward from here, in righter direction and in better step. Then, I dig that. And I feel like that's something that we can all, at least, take the concept of and take note of to some degree. Anybody else have any comments on that?
Jim, I've got a question. How do we whites outnumber blacks by a large amount? How can we embrace black music without crushing it, polluting it, destroying it? We're the elephant in the room. Once we start touching things, we're gonna take it someplace where it doesn't want to go. I love it, but I've got taste, but my taste and your taste might not be the same, and I don't want to ruin what's your culture. How do we do this?
I mean, if we're going to cook a meal together, we can cook a meal together and, not spoil each other's pots and, celebrate the difference of culture. We may not have the same taste or flavors. It doesn't mean I'm going to, not like or have a distaste for everything that you do. It's an experience. I don't even like all of my mama's cooking. Right. That's, just real talk. Is the experience. We have our own tastes and our flavors. It doesn't mean we can't get along. But
for example, you mentioned Jim Crow. Daddy Rice didn't write Jim Crow. He stole it from a black man. And so, we're just too dumb. Things get out of hand. It's just so hard to be tasteful It's just like rock and roll. Black people may have invented rock and roll, but white people ran it into the ground. Come on.
I mean, there's some real good rock and roll artists that are white that I mess with all the way. Good music is good music.
Right.
I do hear where you're
Lots
saying
of
there's
bad.
an aspect of cultural appropriation that is damaging and detrimental to the representation of different cultures, and how do we navigate around that? I don't know. Maybe it is the community itself. Like, white folks, not necessarily holding each other accountable for their actions, but supporting each other's accountability for their actions and how we support others or represent our own culture or other people's culture. I mean, I don't live in your neighborhood, so I don't know all the songs that are being sung or what's popular and what's hip, but you do, and you talk to your neighbors in your community. Sit down together and jam probably a little bit more than we have together, and hopefully we get together and jam one day. But that's where the discussion and the dialogue should happen, and being able to go, all right, this is we can do change there. This song came from a black man. Well, what other songs are we playing that came from black folks? And what does it mean for us to play them? How are we playing them? Are we honoring these folks when we play them? Talk about it. Anyone else?
There's two aspects of this that I don't think you touched on. One is that there was so much black music lost when the blacks came from Africa to America. That there's all this poly melody and poly rhythms and stuff in African music that Americans, European people didn't have. The Europeans had chords and stuff that the Africans didn't have, but the Africans had this fantastic set of polyrhythms and polymelodies, and it's totally lost in America. And the other thing is that much of what emerged as African American music after emancipation evolved from forms of oppression before emancipation. That slaves were encouraged to be musical. They were required to dance on the ships so they wouldn't get out of shape and be too run down to work when they got off the ships. They were encouraged to dance and be happy so that they could work. They were encouraged to sing while they worked because they would work faster if they were singing and keeping a rhythm. It was all, a lot of this music is tools of oppression that you have somehow transcended a lot of takes. You've gotten beyond it. I mean, it's just a miracle, but it's still tied back to this old system.
Carlton, you're muted.
I could have sworn I unmuted that. All right. So I hear what you're saying, and I know a lot of people are under that impression. I will say it like this. It is something that is not dead. It is something that is alive and well, and this is something that I stated earlier, in that is the only reason it may seem dead or appear dead to a person is because they're not in connection with the body, the living body that's still creating the music. The Africans that came to this land with the same spirit that they came from Africa with is still here. Oppression and slavery did not teach black folks how to sing or dance or be musical or be strong or be patient or be temperance. Not at all. You can't make a pearl out of a brick or a diamond out of a log. And so the beauty that came out of Africa is alive and well here. That's what the youth in folk music, in the revival of folk music, is working on, like supporting and bringing to a mainstream audience, because we do have this perception of, oh well, all the African music is dead or alive and well. It's like, no, black folks have culture here. It's not there's culture, deep culture, and like reverent culture in rap music and hip hop, just as much as in country music, rock and roll, R&B, old time, folk, funk. It's all there, and it's alive and well. It's not something that's dead. Uh, Classical music may be a dying form of music, but the aspect of the spirit of the people, and that's only because classical music is based on the temperaments and ideologies and preferences of old white men from the 16th and 17th century. They're gone. That's why it's a dead style that is still carried on today under an aspect of like Shankarian, views and all that from Henry Shankar. Anyway, so the aspect of a living spirit of people here is still alive. I cannot stress how much it is alive and well. I grew up with it. I see it when I go talk to my family, when we sing songs, when we dance. It is alive and well and thriving. Connect with folk, like share song, invite black people to your spaces, like with love, not to take anything, because we all need to be there. Matter of fact, just hey, Black Banjo Reclamation Project is taking banjo donations because we trying to get all the black people we can to play banjos. Like, so be a part of the movement, interact, mingle with the folks and the people, and actually see the life and how folks are living. And then you'll hear the songs that aren't just because of oppression, that aren't in lieu or in shadow of hate or in detriment to their own physical person. You can hear the songs of happy joy and perseverance, all of that without you can hear the songs of what does it sound like for a black person to sing a song that ain't got nothing to do with them being black, or the struggles of oppression, Jim Crow. What does that sound like? How many folk tunes we got and we playing like that, the happy days? And I'm sure there's a lot of them. There are a lot of them. So I personally do not accredit slavery to the beauty of a people. I do not attribute oppression as being the reason that a people are beautiful. A people and a culture and the music is alive and beautiful because it comes from those people. And they're able to stand in the sight of oppression and stand above and rise above these instances because they have that aspect in them. And so, I mean, hopefully that touches on, your question or, what you're looking for. Rock and roll has not been, murdered or damaged. Maybe what you listening to, but I'm rocking on some stuff. Send me your email. I'll send you some stuff right now, brother. Rock and roll is going good. Soul music, R&B, funk, because folks is out there expressing. I'm out here in the forest. I just climbed out of a tree. I'm not thinking about, Jim Crow, the N-word, oppression, any of that. Now, when I go into town, I might be prompted from somebody else, hey, you back in town. However, out here, these songs, I'm listening to the sounds of nature. I'm singing the birds. There are other aspects of my life outside of, the BS that really is here and going on right now. There are other aspects of my life that I live. And I'm sure that's the very same for a lot of black folks, is that we are multifaceted individuals. So I don't think we're stronger now than we were before slave ships arrived in Africa because of slavery. I don't feel like, now black people are stronger specimens because they endured slavery. That's a bunch of malarkey. I mean, really. Come on. It's like, people were a beautiful people. If you had the gusto to make it through and persevere, it's because you had the gusto to make it through and persevere. You didn't make nothing out of, nothing kind of thing, or something out of nothing. These people came with everything that Almighty Spirit equipped them to come with. And that entails the banjo and the seeds that were braided in their hair or hidden on their person, the culture that they brought with them because they were farmers, engineers, creators of civilization. Civilization is a creation by people. It is a creation by African people. These are not a people that were were weak. These were people that were probably a lot less violent than, some. However, they're beautiful people. And that spirit is still living and alive today. Anybody else?
If
If
nobody,
we're 250 right now. Okay.
oops. If
If
nobody else has any questions, perhaps would you be willing to play another tune or another song for us?
Y'all just came for entertainment. Yeah, I play for y'all.
Hey, Seemore.
Yes. You say what?
Before you another song. This is JT. We met at the Berkeley Old
I remember you, JT.
Thank you so much for coming back. It's so good to see you. I wonder if before you play a song, you could tell us where we can find more of your music, where we can find more music of your friends, anybody you feel a kinship to, that's playing stuff in the like the folk vernacular, that you think that more people should be knowing about, more people should be supporting.
Thank you. Great questions. I'm glad you asked. Yeah. Okay. So you can email reversethediaspora@gmail.com. That will give you information to the Black Banjo Reclamation Project, how you can be involved. You can also find my social media under Seemore, all one word, SEEMORE, space Love, LOVE, Facebook, Instagram. I have some music on SoundCloud and iTunes. Just be prepared because it's on multifaceted. I'm all over the place with it. Folk music and Afrofuturism. And then with the Instagram, you can look up Reverse the Diaspora on Instagram, and that'll link you also to some great folk musicians and artists that are local in the Bay Area and from folks we've met just traveling around the country and stuff that, are just really beautiful folks and great players. And then I got a whole list of folks that are playing that are beautiful musicians. You email me and let me know what part of the country you want to know. I'll send you all kinds of names. I love playing, and I've jammed with, all kinds of people. I love learning tunes, too. Did I answer all that for you, JT?
All that and more, Seemore. Thanks.
All right. So I got this little fretless banjo. Oh, we making banjos too for the Black Banjo Reclamation Project. We are doing workshops and teaching the aspect of making banjos. I didn't make this banjo. Dang. Can you go in my room and grab that banjo? It is, you'll see it. It's by a big amplifier in the corner of the room, to the right. He's gonna go grab this banjo we made. We made it out of gourds, so we just grew some gourds this season, and I think we planted about 2,000 gourds. We haven't gotten 2,000 gourds back, but we're getting close. We're gonna cure those and use those to make banjos and teach banjos. Need my motivation for climbing the trees too. We need the wood for the banjo next. You got some good trees, let me know. Some good, hardwood trees. Oh, nice. Thank you. Yeah, this is the banjos we're making here. Old school, from the gourds. And these seeds came from Africa. So, we didn't grow this one. I made this one, but I didn't grow this one. The next ones you'll see will be from the gourds we made. And you can find more about that project too online.
These are beautiful.
All right, I'm gonna play a little tune for you. Thank y'all very much for listening and for your awesome questions. I really appreciate it. Reach out to us. Give us a call. Hopefully, when this pandemic is over, we can get together and jam, or we can find a park and socially distance and jam. All right, you got your fiddle. Hopefully, you're jamming along. We got some recordings so you can play with it. Anything else before we go? Anybody have any other questions before we go or anything?
I just want to say thank you, Seemore.
Yes.
Yes.
Oops. It's back. The echo is back.
We're on
There.
recording.
Better.
Nope.
One
More time.
Seemore.
Fine.
There we go. So I want to also, on behalf of all of us, because I'm sure everybody would like themselves to say thank you, and they are saying it in the chat. Thank you so much for being here and sharing your knowledge and your music and your thoughtfulness with us.
Do I have time to go tell it?
And I hope people will tip the musician, Carlton. I've been putting his PayPal information is in the chat. And also in the chat is how to contact Carlton and find out more about the Black Banjo Reclamation Project. And we're going to put all that information on the BOTMC website. So thank you so very much. And I think there's about to start a jam. So I'm going to get off of here and hook up the jammers who are in my backyard. So thank you very, very much, Seemore. Really love it.
Thank all of y'all. Thank you so much. Thank you so very much. See y'all soon.
Breakout rooms are now open, so go to the jam room. There's two other jam or continuing this discussion if you'd like.
I hope I'm not echoey like.
Yeah. Yeah. We anyway, so.
Oh no, we're not.
All right, thank y'all. I'm gonna go climb some more trees.
Which one? More.
Let me get on my computer. If you can't find it, I can move you.
David.
Can you make
I got it.
Lisa? Can you make me a co-host, please?
Lisa, you're already a co-host,
Oh, great, thank you.
and hopefully
Hi,
people
David.
know.
Oh, let's stop this.